Hi, I'm Bill Holmes, a structural engineer in San Francisco, and I'm the chair of the NHERI Technology Transfer Committee. And I'm going to give you a little short introduction to the committee and some of its duties and capabilities. The purpose and composition of the Tech Transfer Committee, it was created under the auspices of the NHERI Network Coordination Office, NCO, at Purdue University. And its purpose is to encourage implementation of NHERI research, particularly to help young researchers and others not familiar with typical implementation paths. The TTC, as we call it, Technology Transfer Committee, is composed of 17 volunteers knowledgeable of methods of implementation of research relating to the NHERI hazards of seismic, wind, hurricane, and tsunami hazards. These 17 volunteers are mostly engineers, but some academics, but they all have been on various committees of implementation in both codes and standards and other methods of implementation, of which there are many. Here is the membership of the TTC. They are from all over the country, including Gary Chalk from Hawaii, who's a tsunami expert. And we have material people from the wood industry and Phil Line, and the steel industry from Bonnie Manley, I'm sorry. So we have a lot of people from all over the country that are expert, as you can see, in the various categories, including one social scientist, Dee Bennett. We're going to add another social scientist because in the next year or so, we're going to incorporate Converge into our technology transfer activities. I encourage you first to go to the TTC webpage, and you do that by going to this DesignSafe.org website, which you can see right here. And you go under the NHERI Community button, and then there's a Technology Transfer Committee under that pull-down menu. And you will end up at this website, and I'm not going to go through the website in detail, but available on that website is a what we call an introduction sheet that you can see on the right. It's in small print, I realize, but I'll show you a little bit more in detail what's on this sheet. At the top half, there's a little introduction on the left saying a little bit what I've already said about who we are. But it's very important, there's a box here, request a consultation. And we're actually suggesting that NHERI researchers can email the committee telling us what hazard you're interested in implementation. And we will try to get a committee member in contact with you to have a short consultation to assist you in your implementation issues. Now, the bottom half of that introductory sheet talks about a document that we've created, mechanisms for implementation of NHERI results. This is quite an extensive, we call it a white paper. It's 10 or 12 pages, and it includes a lot of information about implementation of research based upon the experience of all the committee members. Included in that paper are common methods for implementing research results, steps to make research more readily implementable in the updating of building codes and standards. In that particular method of implementation, there are definite processes that you go through, which are all described in this paper. We give an overview of the existing building codes and standards, such as the IBC, IRC, and of course, those come from the ASE SEI 7 document. And then for existing buildings in seismic design, there's ASCE SEI 41 standards. And of course, building codes and standards is a common way of implementing research, but not the only way. And this paper deals with all the methods. We also give an overview of research, implementation, and tech transfer programs of major federal organizations such as FEMA, NIST, and BSSC, and also a private organization called the Applied Technology Council, which does a lot of transfer of research results into more practical uses. We also give information on privately funded entities and tech transfer activities conducted by early adopters. Early adopters basically are engineers, mostly engineers who are anxious to apply research results to their projects prior to it being codified. This is particularly true in geotech, where the codes and standards are not very definitive. So geotechs often are adopting research results directly from the researchers. We also describe methods of implementation when proprietary materials or design methods or construction methods are involved. When your research has come up with new ways of doing things, but they're proprietary, that's a special case. And we talk a little bit about how you might implement something like that. And finally, we encourage presentations at professional associations, cross-disciplinary meetings and webinars with questions and answer sessions to get the word out of your research. Of course, the first thing about implementation is that someone has to know about it. So whether it's an early adopter or a code committee or some other policy committee, the research results have to be known in order to develop the processes for implementation. The other activities of the Technology Transfer Committee include recently we completed an abstract review of 82 NSF grants under the NHERI flag, and we selected 25 of those as having results that were potentially implementable. So we had members of the committee contact every one of those PIs and discuss implementation with them. And we were very encouraged that the researchers were quite happy to talk with us and discuss implementations. We created short draft summaries of each project, and the existing implementation plans and additional possibilities were documented. And in fact, many of these programs that we figured were implementable, in fact, the researchers understood they were implementable, and they kind of had ideas of where that research should go. So we're developing an informal report on these contacts and have some overall conclusions regarding the current knowledge and interest among NHERI researchers about implementation. And we also ask those researchers for any potential activities of our committee that could improve our effectiveness. The main conclusions of that study were that we were reminded that the NSF's mission is to develop fundamental research and a knowledge base and does not really emphasize immediate implementation. Many of the researchers reminded us of that. Most researchers in this study group were aware of implementation paths in general. And of course, most of them were experienced researchers. They weren't, none of these particular people were young. And that's one of our targets, is to educate young researchers on implementation. Most of these researchers understand that there typically is an intermediate step between research results and implementation. And they complain kind of to us that there is seldom funding available for this step. Now, often FEMA or NIST takes over that step and takes the research results and puts it in some sort of a format that is more implementable. But this is an issue that we are aware of, and all we can do is try to educate both sides, the consumer side and the researcher side, when there is implementable work. So in conclusion, I want to emphasize a few things. That the NHERI TTC was created to serve the NHERI community, the entire NHERI community. But that includes both researchers and the other side, the consumers, the code committees or the engineers or whoever is going to use this. And we really are trying to form a more communication between those two sides so that some good research results doesn't fall between the cracks, so to speak. And we are not particularly aggressive here. We are not, we will not engage in implementation activities without the researcher's knowledge or permission. So we always talk to the researchers and suggest contacts that they might make to help them get their research implementable. And finally, I want to again encourage you to visit our webpage, and you go to the designsafe.org website, then go to NHERI Community, and finally to the Technology Transfer Committee. And these documents that I've talked about are available for download there. And of course, they're free. So I recommend that you get both the introductory sheet and the implementation white paper. Thank you.